vision, leadership, workplace-related topics. The Voices of Victory podcast show. Subscribe today. Let's go.
Vision, leadership, self-esteem, workplace-related topics.
Subscribe.
The Voices of Victory podcast show.
Voices of Victory.
Vision,
Voices of Victory.
leadership,
Voices of Victory.
workplace-related topics.
The Voices of Victory.
Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory. Voices of Victory.
It's time for the show. You are now listening to the Voices of Victory podcast show.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mario Di Leone.
Hello and welcome to the Voices of Victory podcast. I am your host, Mario Di Leone. We talk about all things leadership, all things confidence, all things self-esteem, all things psychology. In terms of self-development, how we develop our own sense of leadership, as well as vision and the workplace. These are all our topics. Let's go ahead and have fun today, shall we? Today is a very important episode. It's how to win without a word. Being able to outsmart a narcissist with just silence. So have you ever been in a conversation where the more you explain, the more twisted it gets? That's what happens to people that overshare. When they overshare, that's what goes down. You're trying to clear the air, but somehow you suddenly become the villain in the entire story, and you didn't even write it. That's the hard part. So whether it's a partner, a boss, a relative, you leave the convo more confused than you actually walked in. So if that sounds familiar to you, you're not alone, because there's a deep insight to this. This is what we call classic narcissistic projection. And if you don't know what projection is, you can see my episode on that. It's where a person deflects accountability by baiting you. It's what we call an argument bait. They bait you into over-explaining while they themselves dodge the actual truth. Now, they're not looking for clarity. They're looking for control. And the more you talk, the more ammo you give them. Let's get that very clear. So here is the communication strategy for you. The next time this happens, stop arguing. Say nothing. Let the silence do the work and give them the most direct eye contact that you can. No defense, no explanation, just a clear boundary and an exit. So this is called boundary empowerment. Silence isn't weakness. And you got to remember that when things go silent, the people who overshare, they will have a tendency to fill that silence with something that they feel needs to be said, when in actuality, if it's silent, learn to be comfortable with that silence. Avoid filling it. Because silence is not weakness, it's power when you stop feeding the emotional chaos. Think of it as you've turned the garden hose off. It's no longer running. There's no emotions coming out of that. You stop feeding the emotional chaos, the game ends. There's no need to have explanations to people who twist your words. You owe yourself peace. You got to let your stillness speak louder than their actual need to control. That's how you win. So you got to get comfortable with being in the silence. And when you're dealing with somebody, they may be the type of narcissist that requires a last word. You know, they need to say that last word. And you got to remember that that last word is usually a word to provoke someone else's last word. You see? And there's more to the story. Allow me to elaborate. All right, here is how it goes. The narcissist used the last word as a weapon. When they have the last word, it's not about clarity for them. It's actually about control. It's like a verbal mic drop to them that they use to assert dominance over you. They want to spin the narrative or provoke that last emotional reaction. So here's what I want to say to you is if you're the person that's oversharing and you're faced with a narcissist that wants the last word, they're going to get you to overshare. That's their goal. They want you to overshare. And oversharing does come with a lack of confidence. We talk about this on this show. And it's their opportunity to spin the narrative wheel one more time, provoke that last emotional reaction. And here's how it works. What they intend to do is to control the narrative, to control the story. Their last word is a chance to twist that story one more final time, just enough to make you question yourself or feel the need that you're going to defend. So when they get you angry and provoke you, you might verbally spit something out that you really didn't intend. And this is where you have to learn to control your emotional reactions and learn to delay your responses. Train yourself to delay your responses. You could always slow down your responses with the late night FM DJ radio voice. I am no longer interested in discussing this. So that's from Chris Voss, the hostage negotiator. And it's a great weapon. It's a great tool, I should say. And it's spacing your words. The voice goes deep and you're putting pauses in there. What this is allowing you to do also, if you're that oversharing type of person, is that it slows your brain down. When you slow the speech down, the brain slows down with it and you're less likely to overshare. Because what tends to happen, I'll explain, and I've seen this in public speaking for years, is if you get somebody who's a fast speaker and they're trying to speak publicly as a public speaker, they may speak so quick that they jumble their words or they mess up their speech. Why? Because the pace of their mouth is not lining up to the pace of their thoughts. It's almost like the thoughts are moving faster than the words that are coming out of their mouth. Think of it that way. It's all about electrical signals and one catching up with the other. So think of it that way. So when you actually slow down your speech and put spaces and pauses in there and you make it deep, it makes you very firm and very immovable. Okay, we could thank Chris Voss for that. But when we are controlling the narrative, and that's the thing, is that they're going to try to control the narrative. They're going to get you to question yourself or provoke you emotionally so you feel the need to actually defend. So this is called emotional baiting. They're weaponizing the emotions. It's to provoke a response from you. If you bite the bait, then the cycle starts again and the argument never ends. It just reloads and recycles over and over again. So that's what it's called, emotional baiting. A lot of people do this in arguments, by the way. There's tons of people in the debate circles that will emotionally bait you by just asking a question to provoke you to stimulate some kind of dry polemic argument. Okay? Now, it doesn't happen with everybody. Some people do have positive intent when they speak. It's not a generalization. But when it comes to superiority complex, the last word feeds their ego. If they win the conversation, they feel power. They feel powerful. As a matter of fact, if the point they made was manipulative or false, and they've gotten to that point where they've achieved it, then they have this superiority complex, right? There is a silencing through noise, right? The goal isn't to communicate. It is to drown you out. That's what they do. They drown you out. And the last word becomes a verbal wall that says, I'm right, you're irrelevant, and guess what? Whatever you say next is wrong. And that's kind of their whole attitude. And you got to remember, if there's other people around, which by the way, they'll do this in front of other people because it's all about appearance. It's all about appearance and it's all about how they look. So it's more about looking right than it actually is being right. Let me say that again. It's more about looking and appearing right than it is actually being right. Okay? And because if you try to prove them wrong and you have facts to prove them wrong, they might throw a whatever. They'll stonewall you with a whatever, right? So that happens. But here's how silence becomes your actual superpower. Silence is not passive, it's strength. It's active disengagement. And when you're dealing with a narcissist, the silence becomes your emotional firewall. It breaks the cycle. Silence shuts the loop. No fuel, no fire. You're not agreeing, and you're just choosing not to tango along with poison. Now, we disarm the narcissist through silence, because when you refuse to react and you delay your reactions, you delay your responses, or you choose to say nothing, you take away their power. And you also step into your own power. Whenever you delay your responses, you actually step into your own power. Narcissists need your response to validate their manipulation. So no response equals no control, right? Do not feed the trolls, as we used to say online, right? You get the chance to reclaim your energy. Silence says, I choose my peace over proving myself. You're no longer arguing for reality. You are actually living it. Okay? And there's some people that would rather be right than to be happy. And if you're one of those people, you're never going to be happy in life, because you're always going to find a conflict in everything. And not everything has to be a conflict. Not everything has to be an argument. That's the thing, right? Now, when you understand how to step into that silence, you establish your own quiet, dominant energy. But it's more of a proactive energy rather than reactive. The last word is your silence. It says, you're not worth the next breath. And trust me, that shakes them more than any comeback could. Because when you hit them with a comeback, you're just recycling the problem. You're literally recycling the problem. That is the most important thing I can tell you, is that the narcissist may get the last word, but you get the final say through silence. Okay, you're not surrendering. You're sparing yourself from that emotional exhaustion of this ongoing, dry, polemic, pointless debate. That's not weakness, that's actual wisdom. So you got to remember, if you do have to say something, you can do the late night FM DJ voice. I am no longer discussing this. Now, if you choose to say that, and then you have silence, they may try to see that as a tiny thread on your sweater that they can pull and try to unravel the whole entire thing. So sometimes it's actually better saying nothing. Okay? There's opportunities to use that late night FM DJ voice, but then there's opportunities that technically you can just go quiet. You don't have to say anything. Why feed the energy, right? And that's the whole thing. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care.